What's up? This is All Up in Your Biz with Yvonne Trackian, and I am here with Mr. Gary Fox, the podcasting guru. When I saw your podcasting stats on LinkedIn, first of all, I was like, holy shit, he's got a pair of balls to put those up on LinkedIn. I'm not putting mine up. And secondly, I was like, damn, you're doing so great.
But that's like the zoomed in version. It's when you zoom out and go, oh, he's been doing it for 5 years. Grinding and grafting, and like the first 2 years, like it literally like a line going flat and slowly, like 1 or 2 listeners a day sometimes.
And it's amazing because I really do think you started at a time when like podcasting might not have been such a big thing.
Oh yeah.
Like right now, right? I heard these podcast stats this morning. There are 3 million podcasts dormant. 400,000 are active. And 500 million people listen to podcasts. So only 400,000 are actually active podcasts because people start them and then they're like, holy shit, this is actually a lot of work. Or even like me, you start to think, hold on a second, like I'm not actually getting that many listens initially. And I'm 27 episodes in, and I'm now starting to see, like, the downloads I get in a week, I'm getting in a morning. And
that's beautiful. That's a great feeling when you see that.
I'm not getting, like, 100,000 downloads in a month like you, but I'm steadily seeing it grow. So can you take me back to, like, I think there's 2 things, right? I think people getting started, that's number 1.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, I want to start a podcast. And the reality is it's just talk because they don't actually start. And I don't know, are they afraid? They don't know how to start. They've got fear. But then when they do start, or if they do even start, they stop. So how did you get started? Like, where did this podcasting come into being?
There's a lot of great stats there. And I'd agree. I've seen this in action. Like so many people have reached out going, oh, I want to start. And I used to like meet loads of people and give them the playbook and go, this is how you do it. And that's why I love doing pods like this, where it's like anyone can go listen to this now and go, oh, you want to start a podcast? Go listen to Yvonne's episode. Yeah. So this will be like my go-to. I'll divert everyone here. Podcasting is a level 1 in terms of difficulty to get started and a level 10 to difficulty to keep it going. Because that's why it's so intoxicating. It's just like, we could just sit down and have a chat. It'd be great. We can talk about anything. And like the old temptation is, oh, what's your podcast going to be about? I'm just going to talk to interesting people.
Oh my God, I hear that like, all the time.
No. Like it has to be specific. It has to be very clear as what you're doing. How I started back in the day, 2019, podcasting was big in the US. And I've been listening to all these US podcasts and how I built this, Tim Ferriss. And it was great, but it was just entertainment because I couldn't relate to any of it. I couldn't process, like a lot of stuff is just doesn't apply here. Like, oh, we raised like 50 million, small raise. And you're like, okay, great. And a lot of the tactics and stuff were different, and a lot of them are very tech focused. So I was like, right, I want more mentors in my life. I want like to surround myself with a great bunch of people. Community is key. It's overblown at the minute. Everyone's got a community now, and it's the new marketing buzzword, right? But having like a tribe around you, having a close group of people around you that can kind of guide you and just go, I was there, here's the answer. Like that just speeds everything up so much. And you rise or fall to the people that are around you. If you like surrounded by people who are operating at a 4, you'll become a 4. If you're operating people who are at a 10, you'll become a 10. So I said, right, how do I get more mentors or more interesting people in my life? And interesting people shouldn't have time to meet you. They're busy, they're doing stuff, they've got interesting lives. I was like, well, I'll start a podcast because then there's an exchange of value. I'm giving them something, they're giving me something, and we'll click with some, we won't click with others. Now at the start you're giving them nothing, you're giving them 10 listens. But you know what, it was the novelty value. That's how I got started, is that people are like, oh,
but what was it like in the beginning? So, because I always say to people, like, well, what is a good stat? So, like, honestly, when you did your first episode, what did the stats and the numbers look like? Was it like your friends and family?
Yeah,
or was it you, like, going on
no,
Apple
repeatedly
and
listening.
Spotify, what else? Sending it to your family. Please listen, please listen.
Oh, yeah, but it's like anything. It's like when you start a business, who buys? Your friends and your family. It's the same with podcasting. Who listens? Because you have to build a distribution. Like, there's a great quote a lot of people say about business. You know, the first time founders focus on the product and obsess about the product. Second time founders obsess about the distribution and how do you get the product to the people. And it's the same with podcasts. It's like the idea for your podcast is important, but then you got to think, how are you going to get it to people? Because podcast discovery, even in 2024, has improved very little from 2019. It's still hard to grow a podcast.
Yeah.
Like people's mindsets are a little bit skewed from social media and YouTube because stuff goes viral all the time. Like people's TikToks go viral and get a couple of million in a day. And that's not real life. Like that's not how podcasts grow. No one, like 60-minute podcasts don't go viral. Really. You know, that's why you see so many clips, and that's why I've started leveraging clips now, is that you got to meet people where they are. So now in 2024, it's video.
Yeah, and what about, like, who were your first guests? Can you remember, like?
Friends of mine.
Friends.
Literally friends with businesses. Yeah, friends with businesses. Well, the initial concept for the podcast was I was going to, like, come up with, like, 5 business ideas and trial them and, like, experiment with them and then pick one and then launch that as a side business, as, like, a content generation
and were you
machine.
always entrepreneurial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I was. But I was already running a business. Like, it was a totally flawed strategy in hindsight. But I say this to everybody, just start. Don't overthink everything. People overthink their business. They overthink their podcast. They overthink this. I'll wait until are the words that will bring you to your grave. Because I'll wait until the time is right. I'll wait until I have the money. I'll wait until blah, blah, whatever. Until I get the studio or whatever. Like, they're just excuses. They're just mental blocks. So I was like, I'll just start. I'll figure it out. And about 10 episodes in, I was like, that strategy is awful because it's not realistic. I can't keep it up because I was already running a business. And I was like, right, I'll just talk to more people because people were enjoying the interview podcasts. And that's how it started. I was like, okay, I'll interview, like, I have loads of business people who are friends of mine. I was like, right, I'll just start interviewing my network. And then I'd ask one person to refer the next. And that's kind of the secret of how it grew.
Yeah. And what kind of equipment did you have when you started and where did you do it?
I did the first one, actually.
I'm going to go back and listen to episode number 1.
The audio is so bad. But actually, ironically, life is funny. About 100 meters from here.
Okay.
I was living on a barge 100 meters from here, maybe 200 meters. And I bought 2 Blue Yeti mics off Amazon and plugged them into my laptop. And that was it.
And you did the editing and all of that?
I did the editing. Literally, I just came from the Art of Coffee and I had a coffee there. That's where I did most of the editing for the first couple.
Did you teach yourself?
Teach would be a stretch.
Yeah.
I literally cut out the I cut out about 50 of them.
And were you working, what was your business at the time? Were you working in your business and doing the podcasting at the side?
Yeah, but like there was no real, like the podcasting was like 2% of my week maybe. So I was running a property management company at the time. And podcasting was just something I did. I didn't even have seasons. I didn't really have a plan. I would just chat loads of people and then release them every week or 2 weeks. And it was only after like maybe 20 or 30 that I was like, oh, I'll put a structure to it now. And I think it was after episode 100 or something that I was like, oh, I better have like seasons and an actual publishing plan. And so like that's what I mean when I say don't overthink everything at the start. Have a rough plan and a rough destination, but don't obsess about it.
Yeah, and that's the way I kind of I just started. I wrote down in my Pause Penny manifestation box, I'm going to do a podcast. By the end of the month, I'd contacted a studio.
That's it.
I asked a guest in, then a guest, and I was like, I have to keep going kind of now. And there are times where I'm like, shit, like I had a gap of an episode. This was on Thursday they release, but I just put a combo episode of a few, and now I have a load, of a couple more that are going out.
No, here's the secret. No one cares. No one notices.
I know.
The diehards would be like, "Oh my God, where's today's episode?" And I'm like, "Yes."
The
They
only
don't
thing
care.
I would say about that is they don't care, and nobody really realizes it. But I've heard that it's kind of like an algorithm on like Apple and Spotify that if you are consistent, and they'll push your episode up, and that's how consistency and number of episodes gets you in the ranks. So if you're missing gaps, now of course a week isn't gonna miss, you're not going to be missing a gap, but the more episodes you have, the more, that's what I heard, that it kind of pushes you up.
Yeah, that's kind of how I approached it. For me, it was like, okay, just don't miss Thursdays. I just said, right, I'm going to release every Thursday. I was like, right, just don't miss Thursdays. And that kind of like, no one cares, but I care.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
put this
on
pressure.
this 2024, I'm thinking about, one of the things I'm thinking about a lot is good pressure. Not pressure, but good pressure. How do you have external accountability that, you know, you meet your targets, you meet your deadlines? Because you know yourself, and you work for yourself, and you have podcasts and you have businesses. No one's really going to go, Yvonne, did you do that today? Where's the end of day report?
Yeah.
You know, so it's up to you to do that. So for me, I try to create like artificial structures around me that kind of makes me do it on a certain day.
Yeah, and I think you do have to take responsibility for yourself and be accountable. And it's good because there's a really interesting scientific study done that if you write it down, you take action, and you have accountability, like an accountability partner. And I know you do that with
Yeah.
Shane. Is that you're over 70% more likely to achieve your goals. But the reality is that's brilliant to have accountability partners, and you know, people you're going to hit the gym maybe if you get up and somebody's going to be meeting you there. But we also have to take responsibility for ourselves and have a little bit of like, okay, good pressure on ourselves.
You touched on it there. It's speed. Speed is everything. If you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah, stop wasting time
I'm not a Star
writing
Wars
out
fan,
this
but
like
it's
really
the
big plan and be. You know what the problem is with a lot of people? It's definitely something that I am not, is a perfectionist. It doesn't. I think you need to have good quality sound and like, you know, basically a theme of your podcast, but that's pretty much it. And like
you
a
won't
bit of
know
a
when you start.
Yeah.
Like we were having this conversation off air. Like you don't know. You keep tweaking. You're like, oh, that episode worked well. Why did that work well? But you'll never know. You can never find out on a piece of paper. A piece of paper isn't going to tell you, oh, in episode 17 now you're going to have an unlock, and then episode 200 you're going to do this. You just don't know. You have to reflect. I didn't do that for a long time. I didn't reflect enough and kind of go, right, what have I learned from those 10 episodes? But you can't reflect forward. You plan. So I was trying to come up with a ratio this week of like planning versus execution. I think it's plan 10%, execute 90. That's kind of the ratio I've kind of come up with. Like, so I plan heavily at the start of the quarter, then that's the plan for the quarter, and then we do quick daily review, quick weekly review, and that's it. The rest of the time is execution.
And how did you come to the conclusion that you would do seasons as opposed to like, is it like, how is it based? How's your podcast? What's the strategy around? You're on 18 now, aren't you?
Yeah, 18.
Yeah.
Because it sounds really good, right? 18 seasons. Wow, that's really impressive. It's a couple of things, right? I say that flippantly, but it's also kind of true. A couple of things. Sponsorship. So you sell by the season.
But is there a gap? Sorry, is there a gap there, or is every season roll in so you never miss?
There's a gap now. Yeah, there's a gap now because sometimes you're negotiating with sponsors, and now what I've done is I've started batch record loads because I'm putting out so much content now.
Are you doing You're doing a strategy on 2 times a week,
Two
aren't you?
week, 2 deep dive interviews a week.
That's tough.
It might be excessive. It's an experiment, right? And I'm very transparent about everything. I'm running an experiment for 2 seasons to see, is it sustainable? Does it drive growth? If it drives growth, I'll keep going. If it's not, I'll just go back to 1 a week. So there's 2 big episodes a week, 2 big interviews like this, and then 1 recap at the weekend.
And how do you like? So, the 2 big episodes. Are you in a studio? Like, I feel like most of yours are actually in person.
Yeah,
is that strategic?
It is, yeah, because after I was doing them all in person initially,
And
then COVID, and I built out a small studio in Temple Bar. Then COVID hit. I was like, okay, well, I've no choice now but to go online. And I found it really hard, actually. I found it really hard to do it online. It was like restarting. I found it really difficult. But then it's like anything. You're really uncomfortable. How do you get more comfortable? You do more. And I just did more and more. And COVID was very difficult, but it was also very transformational in the fact that like I just sped up. I just started doing more episodes. I think I was doing 1 a week before COVID. And then during COVID, I was like, I've got all this time. Everyone else has got all this time. You'd message people and they were like, yeah,
Okay.
I'm not doing anything else. So yeah, I'll come on your podcast. People were delighted to come on.
And then you can say, hey, did you know that I just had X on my podcast?
Yeah, and there was a few bigger guests during that time, because people were desperate to also like get themselves out there and keep their brand alive and stuff like that. So, you know, they say, oh, don't waste a good crisis. But I didn't think of that at the time. I was just like, I'm just going to lean in here and do more of what I think is right and get more podcasts done. So went to do them all online, and now it's probably 90% in person, 10% online.
Yeah, and originally I was like, I am only doing in person, and then I realized there are so many. Like I was like, how am I gonna? Like I'm a people. Like I like to connect with the person and have a chat with them.
This is special. Like doing it in person is special.
It is.
That can't be recreated
But
online.
it's hard. Like I had James Doty on, neurosurgeon from Stanford, who's just like my dream guest for me personally. Like he's not going to fly to Ireland, or I could fly to California, but I think my husband could possibly divorce me with 4 kids. So like, see ya. But I think that I know that there are some really big podcasters who only do in person, Irish podcasters, and I think that they are missing. They're missing a beat a little bit, because some people some amazing people, and they're just abroad, and unless you have the budget to fly them in.
That's the thing, and that's kind of where I am at the minute. I've kind of probably pushed up to my ceiling limit here in Ireland, but I am doing online, but just the quality isn't there. The quality is tough, because for me, I think about like, how does it look? How does it feel? How do people experience this? And then when people see like a little kind of like Zoom window on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, it just doesn't land as well as I would like it to. So probably I will keep doing remotes, because you get bigger guests, and but I will probably start to travel now to the UK, the US, the Middle East.
If you can travel with it, because like one of my most downloaded episodes, like I was saying, was with Caroline Dalton, and that was in person. But the next 2 was the neurosurgeon and the manifestation coach, both online. So I do think if you can just edit the clips so that they're worthwhile. So tell me your process for getting the guest, who you like to choose, how much research you do, how much prep is involved.
So I get everyone to refer a guest.
Okay.
So if someone comes in today, we do.
Has anybody said my name yet?
Weirdly, no one has. You have not manifested enough to like go right. Yvonne, you're standing outside the studio, just like
I think
talking everyone guest, holding up a photo of yourself outside the studio.
Can I refer myself? Yeah. I think I need to make a bit more sales before I'm on the entrepreneur experiment. How to make as little sales as possible and still survive.
Yeah, but you're getting there. That's why I'm sitting here today. You're very good at getting your presence out online, and you're ahead of 99% of people online, because most people won't put themselves out there. And that's the key thing why people don't start podcasts as well, because it's bloody hard to put yourself out there all the time.
It takes courage, for sure.
Yeah.
But you have to be comfortable with people not liking you, people taking the piss out of you behind your back, and you just being like, well, this is actually what I feel my purpose is, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and you have to be one of 2 things. You have to be authentic all the time, or a complete bullshitter. So,
yeah.
So you see people online, you're like, you are not like that. That is not you. I know that is not you. Whereas I try to be myself with you, because you just have to be honest with people over time and build relationships, because you can't just play a character. You can if you're doing 1 podcast a year, but if you're doing it 3 times a week, you can't.
You won't be able to create content either if you're not authentic.
That's not who I am. I've just no interest either. I've just no interest in doing that and pretending to be something else. That's why I share a lot of stats online as well, because I'm like, I just want to be completely transparent with everything and just kind of hold myself accountable and go, if it's for you, it's for you. If it's not, it's not.
Yeah.
Sorry, you asked me about guests. Referrals is a big one.
Okay.
I'll ask each guest to refer like 1 to 2 people. Of that 1 to 2 people, 1 might be a fit, 1 might not want to do it, 1 might want to do it in 6 months. So it's very much a process of building a flywheel. So you have loads and loads of people in the flywheel at any one time. And then I've kind of reached a point now where people are coming to me going, oh, so-and-so should be on your podcast and da-da-da, which is great. And now I'm at the stage where I've built a really good network that people are kind of pinging me randomly going, I just met so-and-so. Really interesting story. They did X, Y, Z. Perfect example, John from the Black Stuff soap.
Yeah.
Crazy.
3 million soap on, like.
Crazy story. I don't know how I'd never heard of him. My friend James, who's my accountability buddy, he pinged me one day. He goes, I just randomly met this guy, and he's making soap in Sandyford. And I was like, okay.
How much can soap make?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's what you're thinking.
Right? That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, okay, great. Yeah, good for him. Because I get pinged the worst stuff. Like, people send me like, my cousin Philip makes soap and he sells it like online, and he sells bath bombs on Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, not really a fit for the pod. My favorite thing is, do you know who you should talk to? I get this all the time. And I'm like, okay, you're not really a fit.
I get it all the time, though, from people pitching themselves, and I don't mind
It's
putting
so uncomfortable.
I don't.
It so makes me like
I
my
did it.
social anxiety goes to a 10
No.
when I'm like, oh my God, I was at a thing recently and we were doing a judging thing. Didn't know these two people. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I do this. What do you do? Oh, now tell me. That's always a great when someone starts. Now tell me this. Do you accept like guest recommendations? And I was like, I do. Yeah, I do. Right. What about me? I'm like, oh God, I don't even know what you do. Just literally this close.
Oh, God.
This close. And we're in a boardroom. And I was like, this is so uncomfortable.
I know.
I was like, oh yeah, maybe. Let's chat more after. Just like, gotta go.
And I think that's a lesson as well for people, because I also get pitched to, even though I'm much, much smaller than you, but it's people contacting me with, I'd love to be on your podcast, the end. They've no information about themselves. And I really want to go back and say, hey, have you listened to my podcast? Because I might think you're amazing, whatever you're doing, but you're actually not a fit for my podcast. And it's nothing personal, but I have to remember what my audience wants to listen to. Like, I made a mistake of having somebody on recently, and I was like, oh, I think this is really interesting. It was about the brain as well. It was really interesting, but part of me was like, I wonder, but I really wanted to get him on, this particular person. And I had the interview and I was like, oh, like, first of all, there was no connection, which is 99% of the time I actually have a good connection with people. There's no connection. It was very flat. And all I kept thinking during the interview was, I'm not going to be able to put this out, and I've just spent €250 on a studio. Shit. And unfortunately,
it's the worst feeling, especially when you don't have the connection. I've had that a few times. I've been able to salvage it most of the time.
Yeah.
But it's the worst. I've now got a strategy where I just excuse myself if we're having a coffee before, and I excuse myself, go to the bathroom, regather my thoughts, and was like, take control of the situation, and I just have a chat with myself. It's very hard if the connection isn't there. I've had pods that are fine. They're a 7 out of 10. But it has to meet a standard, right? And you have to. I love the connection with people. And like majority of people I get on really well with. But like there is 1 in 10 that you're like, oh, you're gonna make me work for it today.
Yeah.
You're gonna make me work today.
Yeah, and it's so disappointing. But then, like you said, what did you say earlier about a lesson or something?
Oh, it's a good time, a good story, or a good lesson.
Yeah, but how am I, like, this person, like, in particular, has got something to promote. So I'm just like, do you go back and tell have you ever not released an episode? One. Have you told the guest? Or did you just kind of like...
It was a weird situation. It was brought to me by, I'll talk in vagues here. It was brought to me by the representative, we'll say.
Okay.
External representative. And I was like, yeah, cool. And do you know what? Ironically, it was actually quite a cool, quirky story. Not riveting, but it was during COVID, so it was fine. And it was like a Friday at 12, say. No, Friday at 2. And I went on to the online studio, and the representative was sitting there, and I was like, oh, what are you doing here, Seamus? He's like, oh, I just said I'd pop in and just look at the interview. And I was like, okay, don't really do it. It's not the late, but yeah, if you want, just turn off your camera and mute your mic. We'll work away. And then the guy came on, and he was just like, it was the worst. He was like shuffling stuff around his desk, and he was like, he's huffing and puffing. I'm like, you okay? Do you want to reset or whatever? I've had this, that, and the other, and we'd already rescheduled. And I was like, look, do you want to take like 10 minutes, grab a coffee, come back, we'll reset. Like, we're under no pressure. Sure, on COVID, we're not going anywhere. He goes, no, let's just get on with it. I was like, oh, good. Oh, this is going to be a gem. And it was just painful, like 1-word answers, maybe, I don't know. You're just like, clearly not his medium. He had done it at the advice of his external advisor, just not a fit. So afterwards, I pinged the advisor, said, give me a call. And I said, well, that was a complete shit show. And he goes, what do you mean? I was like, oh, come on. I was like, that was terrible.
Yeah.
He goes, do you really think so? And I said, you definitely went play PlayStation for the hour and did not watch that because that was toe curling. And he was like, okay. I said, look, I'm going to listen back to the first 10 minutes just because sometimes you're in your own head. Like
Yeah.
what you said, sometimes you're in your own head. Sometimes you retreat into your own head. And I listened back to the first 5 minutes and I was like, absolutely not. Just
Yeah.
terrible. Because I'm highly, highly cognizant of we are asking people for the most valuable thing in their life, their time. That is the most valuable thing in your life by a mile. My time, your time, anyone's time. But if you're asking someone to hit play, decide that, yeah, I'm going to spend an hour with Gary or Yvonne today. I'm going to hit play. Like 60 minutes is a long time. And how they listen is important because it's very intimate. If you're in someone's ears, you're literally in their head. So like, especially if they're wearing earbuds, you know, it's very intimate. So it's literally just me, you, and them sitting here.
Yeah.
And it's so important that that's a good experience.
Yeah, and I think that's a top tip, folks. It's like if you start a podcast and I think intuition is a really big thing, and know your audience and then know, okay, this is actually not good enough to go out, because if it's not good enough to go out, like, and someone tunes in for the first 5 minutes, they're like, oh, well, this is shit. You've lost a potential listener, and then they may not come back to your podcast for a while until you get some sort of big name. So even though I do say like it's good to be consistent and uploading, it is also quality over quantity. And I do think that like you have to go with your gut sometimes and be like, this isn't gonna.
You do. But there's one caveat to that as well, is that not every pod is for everybody. So I try hit like 80% minimum. And I know, like, you know, and I try to do a broad mix. I try have people from different industries and at different stages. And I know sometimes there's that early stage mightn't interest someone, but it'll interest like 50%. So it definitely, there's a line to be walked. The only line you can never walk back is the quality line. You just can't drop the quality because, you know, you can have different types of guests, but just the quality can't drop significantly.
Do you think that you need to kind of have a bit of a consistent theme, like so people know I go to Gary for like entrepreneur, business, how to scale up, how to monetize my brand? Do you think
I
it's
think about
important?
this every day. Honestly, I obsess about this every single day of my life, thinking about, is the message clear enough? Do I need to niche down? I think you have to be so niche, especially nowadays, because there's just content for everything, which is magic, right? It's absolutely magic. You can, no matter what you're into, there's probably a podcast for it, or there's definitely a YouTube channel. So I realized, like, you have to break through with niche content. And as I scale beyond Ireland, that's what I'm thinking about now all the time.
If you want to manifest your dream life, then what are you waiting for? Pause Penny has created an amazing manifestation box to help you manifest your dreams. It is backed by neuroscience. 7 simple steps, and the box tells you how to do it all. Grab your manifestation box at pausepenny.com and use the code podcast20 for 20% off.
Yeah, and so you talked there about sponsorship. So let's talk about sponsorship a little bit. Like I got lucky. Well, I manifested a sponsor for my first season, and they were Autofulfill, which are a fulfillment center that post out your boxes and packages and all that crack, which was amazing because like I hadn't even started a podcast.
That's huge, to be fair.
It was. But I look back, I reflect back, and I think, okay, I really want the sponsor to succeed. Like, this isn't me just getting money. Like, I actually have pressure that the sponsor succeeds. But if you think about it, right, an early podcast with a sponsor that's a fulfillment center, a listener has to either have a product that's big enough to have a fulfillment center, could be already in a fulfillment center, but would have to swap. And you know, swapping isn't that easy. So it's a hard fit to get. Now, they did have a few kind of like referrals and stuff like that, but like, I think you have to be mindful of who your sponsor is if you want them to re-sponsor you. And so how do you go about getting a sponsorship?
Yeah, and it's tricky, like, because what you said there is true, but it's also the sponsor's job to figure that out themselves. And I've definitely fallen into the trap of being overly worried about how it's going for them in terms of like, God, it has to work, because if it doesn't work, oh my God. So I have a very clear conversation with them at the start going, what do you want? What's the key goals here? What's the metrics? Is it brand visibility? Is it you want to launch a product? Is it you want to have like attendees to an event? What is it? And I had that conversation, whereas at the start I didn't really know. And for me, it's always important that they fit the demographic. That's why that's kind of the first thing I going, right, does their product fit business people? Is it for business people? Is it for people who want to start their own business or have their own business? Okay, that's the first box ticked. And then I have a conversation with them going, like, I've turned down a lot of stuff because the usual crap, like it's just not a fit. Like, just, it's ridiculous. Like, yeah, it's good money, but it's a one and done situation. People just get annoyed about the read and then leave, and then it won't work for them. And so I try to be very specific about, like, are they a good brand? It's in, I'm putting my name to them. They're putting their name to me, but I also think I'm putting my name to them. Are they a good, reputable brand?
I never thought about it that way. I mean,
Oh,
I wouldn't
both.
it's
a double-sided thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't have. I mean, I would never take on something that, again, that's just not like really true to health, fitness, mindset. But yeah, you have to think about it from both sides. Like, does this? You don't want to be one of those people that just like would sell their grandmother.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I've Manscaped sending me emails every week. Manscaped, you know, it's a trimmer for different parts of your body. Put it that way, right? Every week, right? I'm like, oh, that is a lot of money. So if you hear me do Manscaped ads in the future, you'll know I caved.
Listen, Manscaped, can we get a little sponsorship for this episode? Whoever you are out there, I'll throw you in. Like, can you tell me what should a sponsorship amount? What does it generally look like? What do people like? People don't know what to ask for.
It's very hard. It's very, very hard. So I would say it's very different depending on what industry you're in as well.
Okay.
Like, I'm in quite a lucrative industry in terms of like business and finance.
Yep.
It's a very lucrative industry, and I've been very, very lucky that I've had, like, I would categorize them as tier one sponsors. I've had Sage, which is a global company. I've had Square, global tech company, and now I have the local enterprise offices.
Yeah. You got that one, and you know what's so funny? I was like, I'm going to ask the local enterprise office to sponsor
there you
my
go. Ask them right now. There you go. But it's, you know, they're three, and they fit perfect. They fit absolutely perfectly. I've iconic offices who I've worked with for years now. Yeah. Perfect, because especially the way they work in terms of like the hybrid lifestyle of people, you know, getting rid of big offices now, especially small founders. You do need another place. You do need somewhere else to go. I work from home a lot, but you do need a place.
Yeah, you work from home and you're painting your doors black,
oh,
and what
my
is the
house
other
is
thing?
torn
Insulating his attic himself.
This morning I literally tore down. I had to rebuild the studio just for 2 episodes. Then I tore it all down because it's becoming a utility room. We have a chronic compulsion to keep working on the house. It's not healthy. Just chronically keep building, keep doing stuff. So yeah, I do get distracted a little bit easily. That's why it's so important. It sounds like an ad for Iconic, but that's why I like going somewhere else. I like to have a third place where I'm like, okay, this is my spot.
Yeah.
I like going there. So like people like that I work with. Ethos Resilience, like I'm massively into my health and fitness. They came to me and they're like, we're launching this new product.
So are people coming to you now? Okay, does that actually happen with sponsorships?
Honestly, it does. Have I gone to any sponsors? No, they've all been inbound.
Wow. That's
also a little bit lazy as well. I should be going out to sponsors more because
but like you're
they've
wearing
all been
a Whoop.
Inbound. Yeah. Whoop.
Go get it.
Yeah.
I sent them an email.
Did you? You see,
I did.
I should be. And they've an office here.
I got no response. I got no response.
Yes.
Like, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Whoop whoop.
Whoop. Well, look, I don't see. By the way, Whoop, I don't see.
I just bought
Yvonne.
one for my husband.
See, I don't see her wearing it though. Where's social clip?
Any difficult conversations with any sponsors?
Not really. Like with agencies, yeah, it's because they're in the middle, so they're trying to like line up dates and stuff like that. So there's been kind of like instances whereby expectations haven't been managed probably very well on both sides.
Okay.
In terms of like deadline deliveries and stuff like that, and then that's. But I always put it back on myself, going, right, how could I have avoided that? I don't really blame other people. I just go, right, step it back. How could you have done better in that situation? So. Yeah, like there are, but in any business there's awkward conversations. Oh, yeah. To be fair, touch wood, I've been very, very lucky with the sponsors I've had. They've all been very positive, very pro-business.
What's it like negotiating the contract with them though? Because I'm a lawyer.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
pretty straightforward.
Do you do it yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are kind of the key terms? What are anything kind of key? Do they ask, like, do they have any input on the ad?
Oh, gotcha.
or where it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
the
Well, it's up to see. A lot of people want guidance. A lot of people haven't done podcasts before. They haven't done a sponsorship like this. They'll have done radio or TV maybe or
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it's up to you to go. Okay, my ads go in the third minute, and they're 30 seconds long, and this is kind of a sample of what we've done before. But at the start, I was kind of making it up as I went along. I was like, what do normal podcasts do? Oh, okay, normal podcasts do the quick intro, and then they do the ad reads. That's what I do. That's kind of how mine ended up being there. I do a quick intro, then I do the ad reads because I want people to listen to them because
Yeah.
they're paying my bills. Like that's
Yeah.
the reality of it. And people do say it to me, going, "Oh my God, you've got 3 minutes of ads." I'm like, "You're getting an entire hour of free content.
I have to pay for
Listen
this.
or skip through. It's up to you." But you are getting high quality content, and it's only as time has gone on, I've got more confident in myself that I'm kind of going, "Look, you're getting good content. It's for free. You're not paying me directly anything."
Yeah, and I have to pay for this.
Yeah.
It does. Like, is our sponsorships your main source of income?
Yeah.
But then you get also other amazing opportunities. So you got to interview Stephen Bartlett
Yeah.
last year at the Wells. What's he like?
He's cool. Yeah, he's exactly like you'd expect him to be, to be honest. It's funny, like everyone asks, what's he like? He's exactly like he is online. He's exactly like he is in the podcast, a pure pro. Yeah,
Pretty
very
straight
professional.
up professional kind of
Yeah,
guy.
exactly.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Lots of stories about him paying guests, which I don't know if you've heard those.
Yeah.
But my personal opinion about that is that we're definitely I think it's a good time to start podcasting because people are giving up their time. There's kind of a mutual benefit. But if you want bigger names, I do think down the tracks, people are going to be expected to be paid. So whether or not he pays people or not, I don't know. But
Well, I can see how that would work at the start. He's very much a case of he takes a business approach to everything. Right? How do we get here fast and how do we get here efficient? If I had the money he had, I'd be throwing loads more resources at it. I'd have a staff of 10 as well, like, or 30, whatever he has. So I can understand how he would. And there was a big scandal about that. I'm like,
why is this such a scandal? It's a business.
I did find it weird as well. I'm like, so what? Because, you're paying someone for their time. You wouldn't ask for a free consultation. You wouldn't go, do you want to come in and chat to me for 3 hours? Do you want to fly to London
and
or
the
fly
thing
to
is-
LA? So like
Yeah.
sometimes there is a quid pro quo in terms of like someone's promoting something or whatever. But if someone's like an A-list celebrity and the only way you can get them is to throw them 30 grand and you have it, so what?
Yeah, I agree. I actually 100% agree. Now, I hope that's not the road that it's going to... I feel
And
like
I'm
it's
delighted
gonna,
to be here today with my 10 grand appearance fee, and it is an hour well spent.
invoice me later.
Lifetime supply of Paul's Penny.
I asked
Just keeps
you
arriving every month. I'm like,
it's the same box. I've manifested everything I need. I do not need another Pause Penny box. Seriously.
my success, just like after this, my podcast success is going to go off the cliff. But sponsorship is the main revenue, and then there's loads and this kind of like last year, I said like, right, I'm going to push myself forward a bit more. I'm going to say yes to things and really kind of push myself out of my comfort zone as well. Say yes to hosting, yes to interviewing, yes to speaking.
But are those speaking gigs paid?
Some,
Some. Not
Some,
all.
yeah.
Okay.
but I think I look at every single one and go, where's the value here? Is
Yeah.
it money value? Is it access value? What is it?
Yeah, because like you're speaking now to Pippa O'Connor at the Wealth Summit, and she's very like she doesn't do as much media
No.
podcasts, so you now have a direct link to her to potentially get her on your podcast for XYZ.
Exactly.
You know,
we
so
will
it's-
be recording it on the day and we'll be releasing it as a special episode.
Yeah.
So there's huge value there. So you have to
Huge
value your
value.
time. I've set a daily rate and I was like, right, my daily rate is X. How does that equate to what people are asking me to do?
yeah,
And I will very rarely do it for free unless someone has built up a relationship with me and they're like going, look, this is the plan. Like you, when people reach out to you, go randomly, hey, I want to come on your podcast. No context, no relationship building, no nothing. If people do that, ask me to do something for free, I'm like, no, you're grand, thanks. But if people have built a relationship with me over 6-12 months, they're like, look, we're really trying to get this off the ground. More than likely, I'm going to help them if I know them and I care about them. I won't do it for free for like a randomer. For them, it's like whatever it is. It's going to be $5,000, whatever it is.
it's such a top tip because listen, like the thing is, try and build the relationship with the person first. And you think, but I don't know that. I don't know Yvonne, or I don't know Gary. Well, go onto his Instagram and like what he's posting, and then comment on the post, and then follow him on Instagram, and wait a couple of months, and then reach out.
How do you develop any relationship? You start to engage with the person. You start to like build a rapport and go, oh, they're exactly like I thought they were, or no, they're not kind of how I thought they were. You know, you don't click with every guest, right?
Yeah.
You know, not every guest is your new best friend, but sometimes like 1 out of every 4, you're like, they're a cool person.
Yeah.
We click, we vibe, we're going to keep in touch.
Yeah.
It's the same with anything. Like you have to build a relationship before you just, can you give me something for free? You're like, okay. But like I will always have a daily rate and go, right, this is the daily rate. What do you want to work on?
Yeah. And then in terms of going back to your guest, like when you do get that introduction, what are you saying to them in your message, and how much... Like I try and give a little bit of a spiel about myself. Like, you know, people aren't going to read long emails. So it's kind of short what my podcast is, how long of the time it is, what time zone I'm on, because like people want to know how long it is, and like why I think they are a good fit for my audience.
That's a good one.
So giving it back to them. But then, like I told you before this, like I don't do a lot of research. I might look at their social media. I won't read their book. Because I find the more I know about the person, I start to like go, oh, could you tell us that story that I read in your book? And it's just not organic at all.
And they're repeating a story they've probably told 50 times.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to, I do it very similar to you. I will know the outline.
Yeah.
I will know kind of like why they're here. I will know kind of by osmosis, I will probably have heard a lot of their story previously, or I'll be familiar with who they are. What I've started doing now, and this is kind of an evolution, is that I'll talk to people that know them.
Ah, yeah.
And I will say, talk to me about Yvonne. What do people not talk to her about? What should people talk to her about? What does she not talk about?
Talk to my husband and I'm screwed.
Yeah, it's like prep is like 50 pages. But, you know, trying to get the extra piece, because touching on what we talked about earlier, podcasts are very popular now. So people are going on lots and lots of podcasts. Hasn't reached here yet, but, you know, you see it across the big podcasts.
Yeah.
You know, there'll be, you know, Chris Williamson will have the same people as Steve Bartlett, as Joe Rogan. Like there's probably top 10 podcasts and they'll all have the same people, which kind of makes sense. So I'm trying to pull out like little gems from people going, if someone has invested in their company or they've worked with them previously, I'll ping them a message and go, hey, can you give me a couple little insights, maybe like that people don't really know, but you know they'd be happy to talk about. I'm not trying to never trying to catch someone.
Yeah.
I am very pro founder. I am very pro the guest. I'm never trying to catch someone out and put them on the spot. I'm just trying to like maybe dig a little deeper to give them like, and often people say at the end, they're like, that was like therapy. Thanks.
Yeah.
And it's just letting people talk, giving people a chance to have a proper long conversation.
Yeah, and I also think that another thing, if you want to become a podcaster and a host, really work on your social skills. Like, for example, the ability to have a conversation with somebody and make them feel comfortable. I had a guest recently and things were just, you know, like that the internet was cutting out. This was on her side. Things were going off that. And I just said to her, I was like, hey, I don't sweat the small stuff here. Like, relax, it's fine. You know, don't worry about it. And at the end, she said to me, you know what, Yvonne, I've been on a lot of podcasts and you have made me feel the most comfortable because some hosts are so stiff. So like have those conversations where you can, well, what I would say is be genuinely interested in your guest. Don't be picking a guest because they've got thousands of followers and you think it's going to be good for you. People can feel that intention. You know, like I imagine that when you choose your guests, you're genuinely interested and want to learn about what they're doing.
There's something I keep in my mind all the time, and it's, are you listening to reply or are you listening to listen? Yeah. A lot of people listen to reply. They're waiting for me to stop talking so they can tell their point of view. So it's like, listen to listen, don't listen to reply. So that when I keep that from my mind all the time, I'm like, right, listen to what they're saying. And like you, I don't have a big sheet of questions because I find that's more radio style. Okay, great, Gary. Now moving on to like, tell me your favorite like sandwich. Where's the best pint of Guinness in Dublin? You know, all that kind of stuff. No, like just relax. Listen to what the person's actually trying to say.
I think so. And I think that you have to, if you want to be a podcast host, you need to understand your personality. Some people would
You have to understand yourself. Yeah, exactly.
And know yourself.
Yeah.
Like, am I good people person and conversationalist? Like, I could be in a taxi and I come home and I tell my husband a story like this guy and his mom jumped into the river and she couldn't do this, and his dad was like, how in the name of God do you get all this information? Like, 'cause I'm genuinely interested in the person. Guest on your show that gave you the most perspective?
Oh, we're getting into the heavy stuff now. The guest that gave me the most perspective. Not one person, but broader themes in terms of how I want to live my life. In terms of, you put these people on pedestals, and especially people who've like had a big exit, or they've sold, or they've been acquired. I always ask them, like, how did it feel, and things like that, because you're trying to like chart your own path. You're kind of going, what do I want? What is the end goal here? That's something I'm very curious about teasing out with people, going, why are they doing it? Why am I doing it? Why are you doing it? Like, what do we actually, are we living with intention, or are we just drifting? Are we drifting because we think we should have that career, or we should have that business? Or are we living intentionally, going, right, I know exactly what I want to go, I want to know what I want to do. And it's kind of like the theme has emerged of like, people often just kind of start and then get sucked along, and then it ends, and they might exit for like 10 million, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
I can never, and that really, it shook me, and I've talked about it a lot recently, because I'm like, that's most people's goal, right? Inverted commas, goal. The goal is to be financially free. But then I've met so many people, because they've lost themselves along the way. They've kind of lost themselves. They've lost their identity. They've lost their fitness. They've lost their mental health.
They might be divorced.
Oh, I was at a dinner recently, and like, it was real old boys dinner, literally pale male stale. And I was just sitting around going, it was like, like the Ghost of Christmas Future.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, these are the ghosts you never want to meet in your future. So I try, like, look at other people and go, right, what was the outcome there? Trace it backwards. So stepping it back to where you are now, what do you need to be doing to not go in that direction, as opposed to, like, because people's outcome is very specific to them. So I try not to focus on people's outcome, like, oh, they sold a business for 20 million because of X, Y, Z. There is 100,000 micro decisions that could have sent them in a completely wrong direction. So for me, it's just about, how do I live the fundamentals day to day and not get obsessed with the end goal? That's kind of the biggest
and chasing
perspective.
Chasing the money. Like, I know somebody that sold their business for a lot of money, and I asked them, I talked to them about it, and they were like, God, I don't know if I regret selling the business.
They nearly always do.
So much purpose. I had something to get up for. And I was like, but now you've got what, like X million, lots of millions in the bank, and a villa abroad, and you're living, like, yeah, but like, I actually enjoyed what I did, and I had a bit of purpose. So I think sometimes we think that the money is going to make us happy. And I know a lot of people say, oh yeah, when you don't have money, let me know about it.
Yeah, and I do hate that when millionaires tell you to live for today. And you're like, well,
with my 10 million in the bank,
I'd love to have that problem. I'd love to figure it out. I'd love to get there myself and tell you. So yeah, it's a real balance. I think there is a money line you do need to get to. I talk to a lot of young entrepreneurs. I'm like, right, first, I want you to get this into your head: survive to thrive. Don't like get obsessed about the money or whatever. You need to stay alive long enough. You need to stay in business long enough to thrive. It's like, because it's not going to be this like curve. There's this myth of like the upward curve. But that's why I started tweaking the messaging on the podcast, just to business, body, brain. I try to and I'm trying to slowly change the messaging around being a founder and being a business owner. Like Elon has this thing where he says, it's like owning your own business is like staring into the darkness, eating glass. And there is that myth of the founder has to be miserable, has to be under pressure, has to be like, working 80 hours a week. I hate it. I hate that bro hustle culture, because it's just nonsense. It's setting people up, especially younger people, up to fail. In your 20s, you can work like hell, absolutely.
Yeah.
But don't lose yourself along the way. Don't lose any kind of sense of self. Now, it's easy for us to say when you've had kids and stuff. It does change your perspective, as cliche as that sounds. I only get sick in my mouth when I say it, but it does, and it's in a good way. But it's all about making sure that, for me now, the perspective thing, and I'll wrap up a very long question, is that keeping yourself, having that self-awareness to know, right, am I on the right path day to day? Not like looking at the end goal going, oh, am I going to get to the end goal? Because you don't know what the end goal is going to be.
Yeah.
It'll probably not look nothing like
Like
you
what
thought
you
it was.
started. Yeah. And just even in terms of my own perspective, like, you know, I would have worked really long hours in a law firm and all that kind of stuff. And I promised myself I am not allowed sacrifice my sleep anymore, because I could see how much of an impact it was having on my life, on my heart. I had 2 like minor heart operations, and like that was solely stress and sleep. So I'm go to bed early and I get up early, but I know, like, I'm interviewing some entrepreneurs that were on Dragon's Den from London next week, and really cool guys. They are sending me emails response so late at night, and I'm like, I am in bed. Now that's fine, and I think that that's okay. But remember how important, but I don't have this thing, and I'm not saying they do under any circumstances, but like, I don't need to get to the top so quickly. You know?
It's a longevity game.
Yeah.
To me, I'm thinking about longevity, and as I got older, got kind of like more self-confidence, and kind of going, I am who I am. This is how I like to operate. I'm going to go to bed at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm going to get up at 5, whatever it is. You know, it's that thing of like having that self-confidence, whereas like you like burnout, we hear about this all the time. Burnout. And it's true, because there is that culture of like, I just need to work harder. I just need to push harder and push harder. And there is a massive law of diminishing returns. There is no doubt about that. You'll get probably 5 to 6 good hours a day of work.
Yeah.
If you do 5 to 6 good hours work a day, even 6 is probably pushing it. If you do 5 deep focused hours a day and compound that over the year, massive, as opposed to doing
10 distracted hours looking at WhatsApp, scrolling through TikTok,
people's
Instagram.
screen time is 4 hours plus.
It's crazy.
So like, no, I'm no angel there. My
No,
screen time is
I know
higher
it's
than it
crazy.
should be.
I'm saying it is actually crazy.
But you know, if you're just saying, oh man, you know, I'm more grafting 12-hour days, you're like, show me your phone. If you have 4 hour screen time, then you're only okay. Let's take
I don't
it back
have
to
time
8.
to do this. Show me your phone is my answer.
Yeah.
And I have heard other people say, I don't have time for this, and the response is, it's not important enough to me.
That's
and
what it is, though. 100%.
Yeah, if you want to do something, you will absolutely make the time. Just look at your screen time. But what are there are days for me, you know, that I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm a lawyer that, like, hands up, like, I earn a good salary, like, I can just go in, do my work, and I like my job. And I'm like spending money, spending. Like, my husband says, you're talented at spending money, Yvonne. And like, and then there are just these down days of like, why am I doing this? What are your down days like? Have you ever had a period of you're like, oh, fuck this, I'm giving this up. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, like, not all the time. That sounds dramatic. Like, but I definitely have swings. I definitely have, and I'm trying to live a more kind of like balanced life so I can avoid the downs. So the downs aren't quite as high as the highs. It's not like I'm up and down that much, but I will have, like, that's why I talk about momentum all the time. When I have my momentum up at the minute now, the last month, momentum is perfect. I'm healthy, training, everything is good, work is good, everything's in a flow. But I've definitely worked on, like, with a therapist for the last like 2 years on just maintaining that.
Okay, not a mentor, a therapist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Proper counselling, proper sitting down once a week, once every fortnight now, for an hour.
And is that like therapist for like trying to figure out, like, why do I want to work this hard and do these things? Or
no, it varies, right?
Yeah.
So like during COVID, we're not going to go full Steve Bartlett and have the tears here. But during COVID, it was very, very challenging. Business went from like 500 grand to zero in like 4 weeks.
Wow.
You know, we had 2 miscarriages during COVID, and my best friend passed away. Within the space of a year, all those things happened. So like the mental toll was huge, absolutely massive. So I realized that, like, into every life rain must fall, right?
Yeah.
But you have to take the steps, because if you just stay there, that becomes like your identity. You know, these people are, oh, poor me, this happened, and poor me, this happened. And it's not instant. It definitely took probably 12 to 18 months of just work. But you got to do the work on everything. So it was a bit of that. It was touching on those issues. It was touching on, so once we kind of like worked through those, then it was like, right, now how do we tune? How do we like really know myself, get in touch with what works for me? And it's kind of in the last 12 months where I'm like, okay, You don't have to conform to the people. You don't have to like say yes to this, or you don't have to do that. What works for you? Try and understand your brain, what works, and don't ever feel you should do things.
Yeah.
I was very much a case of, I should do that. No, just say no.
Yeah.
Like,
and don't be a people pleaser.
I love this. I love these conversations. In a large group, hate it. Hate it. Like
Yeah.
those 10 table things, can't stand them. They're all like about the weather, you know. Whereas I love like deep. I just can't stand talking about the weather. If it's raining, put on a jacket. Just
Yeah.
It's a very Irish thing. I like deep conversations now, and I like spending time with people I enjoy, who I really not get value from, but whose company really enriches me. Whereas like before, I would have done all those things, would have went to all the events.
Because you think you need to be there.
Yeah, you do. You kind of think, oh, I should be doing this. And all you're doing is just, you're becoming an imitation of the other people you see. You're becoming like a version of them. Whereas when it was working on going, right, why do I get distracted so much? That was a big one for me. Why do I get distracted so much? Why do I have it's funny you asked me that conversation, or you asked me that question. I would have days where like I'm at a 10, and I would have days where I'm at a 3. I'm like, how do we just like bring that up? How do we like keep those like, how do we keep that consistency?
Neutral. Yeah.
How do we keep like maybe like a 7.5, maybe an 8? How do we keep around there so that, and often there would be no rhyme or reason to it. So it comes back to like knowing yourself, knowing what works for you. What did you stop doing? You talk about sleep, and it's all quite boring. Sleep, nutrition,
exercise. I could tell you here myself.
It's so boring because no one wants to hear that. You're not listening to this going, oh my God, I heard this guy in a podcast. He said I should sleep more. That does not make a good clickbait headline. But it's true, right? And not, I'm very much into my health, and I'm very much obsessed with like working on myself. And people go, yeah, you're very intense, you're very extreme. I'm like, that used to kind of like throw me off, and then I would stop. Whereas now I'm like,
yeah,
no, I just value my health.
Yeah.
I just value being around for my daughter. I value living as long and as healthy and as happy as I can.
Yeah, and you kind of, there's always these things that people are like, what do they say about like, you know, I would die for my kids. And there's that meme, it's like, do you want to live for your kids instead?
I love that.
Like,
yeah, it's so powerful because people take on the kind of like, I don't have time because I've got kids. And you're like, okay, every year you don't exercise, every year you eat like crap, every year you're stressed out. That's just like taking probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years off your life every year. It's just your lifespan is just shrinking backwards.
All because you're prioritizing something else.
Well, people prioritize the now, right? Because we all want instant gratification.
Yeah.
Or cheap dopamine. Like we chase cheap dopamine on social media. It's easier to have a distraction than it is to go,
I gotta get this shit done.
I need to get my shit together.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. Do you find when you're interviewing like men versus women, the entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs versus male, is there any like consistent theme that kind of comes across?
Female entrepreneurs are treated extremely poorly. The system is not set up to help female entrepreneurs succeed. There's no doubt about that. Like some of the stories female entrepreneurs have told me are abysmal. Like just rampant sexism. It's 2024. You kind of think these things have gone past. Rampant sexism, even just the culture we have of childcare and just how things are set up. I'm doing a great event actually in a few weeks. NDRC Dog Patch are setting it up, and there's going to be free childcare at the event.
Wow.
And I was like, that's excellent. That is absolutely class. It's for 150 female entrepreneurs. I'm doing a couple of chats and a couple of breakout sessions with them. But they're the kind of things we need.
I'm going to show up with my 4 kids.
Yeah. I'm not going to the event. They're just going to drop them off for 3 or 4 hours. But that's the kind of stuff we need. Whereas there is huge sexism still within like the business community towards female entrepreneurs.
But did you see recently there's I'm trying to get Amy Connolly on my podcast. What's up, Amy? Sculpted by Amy. I bet you she's on your list.
She 100% is. I'm chatting her in at Ecom Live in a couple of weeks. So if I get her, then I'll say, oh, and there's this other podcast as well. once I secure her, I'll talk to her about you.
But one thing that I saw that was a kind of an article. Well, it was in I think the Business Post. But another lawyer called it out, and basically Amy's like, you know, headline was in like the health, beauty, lifestyle section, instead of like smack bang in the main part of the paper being like, look at what she's done.
Interesting on that. I have a take on that, which isn't that. I think that person was chasing a bit of clout on social. I think that person was setting up a little bit of a, they were framing it in one way. I get it, but when you take a grown up view of that, I worked in media, so I have a kind of more of an insight. That's probably a sub editor and an editor going, shit, we need to put this somewhere. Where are we going to put it? Okay, move that there, move that there. Not everything is a great conspiracy.
Yeah.
Not everything is this giant conspiracy. On the whole, the system is set up not to help female entrepreneurs, but I think sometimes people take a sensationalist view, and someone tried to take that with me last year. They were like, oh, look at you and all your bros doing your bro podcast. And they literally went after me on LinkedIn. I was like, I was on holidays. I was disgusted. I was literally on holidays, Sunday afternoon, and I posted up. Do you know what it was? It was the thread I post every month of like trying to help people, going, here's my stats, here's what I've been working on, here's what's working, here's what's not.
Yeah.
And that person took exception that the last, I think, 5 or 6 guests had been men. And took exception and went after me in the comments. It was a Sunday, so I was lying back. I was on holidays, lying back, and a friend of mine texted me, and he was like, look at this. I was like, oh shit. It's finally happened.
Yeah.
Someone's trying to cancel me. And they just kept going. And then all the other people were coming in, commenting, going, yeah, why is it like all men? But none of them had listened to the pod. You're kind of going,
which was your favorite episode?
And you're kind of going, oh my God. You're just like, just think. Just think before you make these harsh criticisms of people online, because what you're saying on LinkedIn to get clout actually impacts people, and you're doing nothing yourself to further the cause of female entrepreneurs. All you're doing is using it as a vehicle for your own ego. You're just using female, and I hate it because it's taken away from the actual conversation. They're making themselves the main character. You're like, okay, of how many entrepreneurs I've had on, how many entrepreneurs have been female over the course of the last 2 years? Mm-hmm. Not as many as I'd like. And I'm very transparent about that. Not as many as I'd like.
But what's the proportion of male versus female? What's the proportion in Ireland?
But no one takes that.
And you had Sharon from Peachy Lean on. I actually really wanted to get the tonsil sticks lady on, because good. I haven't listened to her yet, but I did hear a story of someone saying she went in for investment twice, didn't get it, but then sent a man in and she got it. I don't know if that's true or not.
Don't know if that's true, but she is phenomenal.
Yeah, so I'm going to listen to her.
Superb.
I bought those for my kids.
But there's so many epic female entrepreneurs. I never call them female entrepreneurs to come on, because I find that demeaning, and I never do the whole, oh, aren't she great? Because it's so demeaning. Treat them as they are. They're entrepreneurs. Don't label people.
Do you know what I do find though, and this is true? I find a lot of female entrepreneurs are co-founders with a man. The man is like their husband or something. And that gets me a little bit.
Everyone's situation is so different.
Yeah.
Everyone's situation is so different. But for me, it's just important. Again, it comes down to a quality thing. You got to make sure you keep the quality on. You can't just bring people on going, oh, I better bring on someone this week. It'll keep X group happy. You have to take everyone on their merits. I take every single person. I don't care where you're from. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care about anything. I care, are you a good human? Are you building something interesting? Are we going to have a good time?
Yeah,
That's
we
it.
bring gender into everything now, don't we?
Yeah.
But I suppose I probably was one of those people that read the paper and was like, yeah, why isn't Amy
you
Connolly
tell
on the front page?
Yeah.
Now, come on my podcast.
Yeah. See, I fought your corner. I just think online it's very divisive, like, because if you got all these people into a room, you'd have a very reasonable conversation. That's why I love doing podcasts, because you can have a long form conversation. Whereas online, you're sitting at your laptop,
and you always
like,
remember that.
I'm gonna tell him. You forget that on the other end of that computer is a person, is a man or a woman, and they're like, oh, you just ruined my day.
Yeah.
Because they actually commented under this other entrepreneur. They put his photo up. I know that guy, and he had just relaunched his business after essentially going bust, and he'd relaunched, and they had done an article on him. So his face was the face of toxic masculinity, just because he'd relaunched his business. And it was totally unrelated to him. But now they were, so you always got to think these things through. Things are never as black and white as people want them to be. People always want a narrative. Hero, villain.
And
good,
and negative
bad.
one. Negativity sells.
Negativity sells.
And negativity is the one that drives the person over the edge because that's all we focus on.
Well, you see it on podcasts a lot now and social media. You know, anger sells, tears sell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How can I make Gary
Yeah.
cry today?
Come on, Gary. We've got a couple of minutes left. Squeeze out a few tears. But it's true and it's sad because stuff is nuanced. Life is complicated, right? Shock horror, life is complicated. Not everything is a clean white line as much as we'd like it to be. Stuff is nuanced.
Yeah.
Should things be better? 1,000%. Can we get there? Absolutely. But I always say, never complain about something unless you're going to do something about it. I never heard from that person again. They never commented on probably the 50 female guests I've had since. Never. And that says everything you need to know about people like that.
Totally. So final 2 questions. Who are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for my wife and my daughter.
Yeah.
My daughter's come into our life 16 months ago and it has been absolutely transformational. Every
She's
single
16
day.
months?
16
Same
months.
as my twins.
Yeah.
Are they 16 months?
16 months.
Almost. So December, baby?
Yeah,
22?
December 6th.
She was just
6,
the
12,
twins.
22.
She was your rainbow baby.
And she was. Yeah.
Did
She
it
was
give you a
my
lot
rainbow.
of perspective on having loss before?
Huge, monumental, changed me fundamentally as how I view myself, view other people. After having her and the journey to have her, it just changed my perspective and gave me huge awareness of other people. Everyone's got something.
Yeah.
And that's why I was so emotive about the previous piece, because you never know what you're saying to someone. You never know what's happening in their life that day. You never know the one comment that'll be the one too many. So you got to be so careful. I'm not saying tiptoe around people, not at all. But do you need to make that comment? Do you need to put that out there? On that day, someone could be having a really bad day. So you got to be super careful about how you treat people. It's given me huge empathy for how I view myself, how I view other people around me. And it's just having her, I now see my life through her eyes again. I see what it's like to be a tiny little human, and it just makes me think about my actions, which is
and
good.
you'll see as they get older, you'll realize that kids are so much smarter than
Wild.
the adults. Like I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and she'll say, "I'm sad, mommy." And I'm just like, oh, like they're really in tune with their emotions, kind of, and they're really in tune. Like, no, I don't. Like they just teach you so much, and you're just like, oh, like we always push our emotions down,
Afraid to reveal it in case someone judges us.
Yeah. Yeah. But then you'll see as they get a little bit older, like that 5-year-old, that they want to fit in. It's that starts to happen. Like they're like, oh, I don't want to wear that because I'll be made fun of, or it's strange. Like it's an amazing kind of evolvement of like.
I'm excited for it because like even every day you're kind of going, oh, she couldn't do that yesterday, and it's really exciting. Like it's a real, and I'm making sure that I'm there a lot. We were talking about balance earlier.
Yeah.
I'm making sure because you only get like maybe 10, 12 years where you're their person. You're their everything. So I'm very conscious that like we've a year down, so we've 11 more years where you're their everything. And you get whatever someone explained it to me. You get or Sahel Bloom, I heard him say, you get 16 summers with them.
Yeah, something like 16 or 18 years.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
That's true. But you always take it for granted because someday when we've this, we'll do this. I'm like, every summer counts, every day counts, every moment counts.
Totally. And final question. What are you manifesting in your life, or for a podcast, or for what are your top things?
My top things is to build a #1 business podcast in the world, get top 10 in the next 2 years, and then slowly edge up to #1, because I think the business world needs a very nuanced view. It needs like a more holistic view as to how people's stories are, and I'm obsessed with people's stories. I'm not obsessed with companies. I'm obsessed with the people behind them. I'm obsessed with the founders behind them. So I want to build a global podcast that has reach, that pays me a great salary, brings me a lot of opportunities. I'm very excited about the opportunities it's going to bring. I'm now open to all these opportunities. I used to try force it. I have to hold on so tight and make it happen. And whereas now I'm like, okay,
Let it go.
it's going to bring all these opportunities. Say yes to really interesting opportunities. Do some investments. Work with great people, and it's all going to be good.
Yeah, and I think that there's an amazing opportunity there for like a book, like what the entrepreneurs say, and like you have this book of entrepreneurs that like, oh, Jonathan Legg said this, and Niall Horgan said this, and Sharon Keegan said this, and it's like, all these amazing entrepreneurs that give you like that bit of insight into their
Yeah.
into their
So
life.
book is on my manifestation list. You'll
Yeah.
be happy to know. Write a best-selling book. I want 4. So I want best-selling book in the next couple of years. Then I want a business, brain, and body book. So 4-book series.
Yeah, amazing.
That's the first time I said that out loud.
Well, now you're going to
you
write
go.
it down in your Pause Penny manifestation box.
Every year I
The
do
sponsor
do a
of this
Notion doc.
podcast.
Well, I started doing more manifestation from watching your content. I was like, right, start of the year, I'm going to have 5 manifests on the top of my Notion doc. Notion doc holds everything in my life. At the top of my, like, I call it the Fox OS, my operating system for my life is there. Top of that, there's 5 things that I'm working towards. I see it every
Well,
day.
in this manifestation box, it'll be your top 3, and Notions is great, computer is great, but writing down is really good for the brain.
I'll finish on this. I've started doing this thing whereby September 6th, we're going somewhere very special. Every day I write down. So it's 140 days today.
Yeah.
And I have a word under it. So my 3 words for the year are focus, intensity, and leverage.
Yeah.
So every day I go 140, focus. 139, leverage. 138, intensity.
Yeah.
And every single day I do that because I write it down and focus my brain going, right, it's 130 days. Because we have this thing of, oh, I've loads of time. No, work towards something.
Totally. And I want to go to that June event. You have some June event where you're going to be
I
talking
haven't
to
even
people.
figured out what it's going to be yet. But yeah, you can come. I say things really, like you said, speed. I'm like, just commit. I'll figure it out.
But that's actually, I think, probably something that I see in other people that they say, like, you know, like, I'm doing Wellfest in like 2 weeks, and I committed to it. I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah.
like I'm speaking at it, and
You'll
I'm like,
figure it out now.
Oh, I'll figure it out. I'm doing a mom talks next week. They've got a mom, and I'm like, yeah, I'll figure out closer to the time. It's like, say yes to the things that you want to, but like, just do it and figure it out along the way. It doesn't need to be perfect. Okay,
Precisely.
Mr. Gary Fox, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was so much fun.
Thank you.